Ukraine's military struck Russia's Saratov oil refinery overnight, causing explosions and a large fire in the area around the site in the latest attack on Russian energy facilities. Writing on Telegram, Ukraine's general staff said that a sea oil terminal in Russian-occupied Crimea and a warehouse in occupied Donetsk had been targeted in separate attacks on Monday night. The Russian governor of the Saratov region, Roman Basurgin, said on Tuesday that an overnight attack had damaged civilian infrastructure in the region. The attack came as Russia reportedly deployed about 150,000 troops to capture Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region as fighting between Kyiv and Moscow soldiers intensified. Ukraine and Russia issued conflicting accounts of fighting around Myrna-Rad, an embattled town to the east of Pokrovsk, which Moscow's forces have enveloped from almost all sides. Ukraine's top military commander, Oleksandr Syrsky, told the New York Post that Russia was concentrating some 150,000 troops on a drive to capture Pokrovsk, with mechanized groups and Marine brigades part of the push. Meanwhile, Volodymyr Zelensky has visited the frontline city of Kherson in Ukraine's south to celebrate 3 years since its liberation in November 2022. Ukraine and Russia have issued conflicting accounts of fighting around Myrna-Rad, an embattled town to the east of Pokrovsk, which Moscow's forces have enveloped from almost all sides. The Ukrainian military said on Facebook on Monday that it had delivered supplies into Myrna-Rad and rotated out troops fighting in the town, including those who were wounded. Ukrainian units are confidently holding their positions and destroying the occupiers on the approaches to the town, the statement said. Logistics to the town are complicated, but are being carried out. Russia's defense ministry said on Telegram that its forces were advancing on the town, noting gains in 2 of its districts. President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukrainian forces were holding their positions around Pokrovsk and Dobrapilya, a town to the north, where Kyiv says its troops have made gains. Ukraine's top military commander, Oleksandr Syrsky, said Russia was concentrating about 150,000 troops on a drive to capture Pokrovsk, dubbed the gateway to Donetsk, and in Russia's sights for more than a year as it pushes to control the whole eastern Donetsk region. Mechanized groups and Marine brigades were part of Russia's push, he told the New York Post. There are ongoing battles and fights raging on. There are fast maneuvers carried out by the enemy all the time. The battlefield reports could not be independently verified. Russian troops were also advancing on villages in the Zaporizhzhia region further south, frontline reports suggested. The Russian Defense Ministry said 2 villages there, northeast of the town of Hyliapol, were among the 3 it had captured along the 1,000 kilometers, 620-mile, front line over the past 24 hours. Ukraine's deep state military blog noted a significant increase in gray zones, with uncertain control in Zaporizhzhia region. Ukraine's Anti-Corruption Bureau said on Monday that it was conducting a large-scale investigation into the country's energy sector, alleging kickbacks in transactions involving the state nuclear power operator, Energodom. Luke Harding reports that the bureau, which operates independently of the government, alleged that several senior figures were involved. Ukrainian media identified one of them as Timur Mindych, a businessman and associate of Ukraine's President Zelensky. Mindych reportedly fled abroad hours before investigators arrived at his Kyiv apartment to carry out a search. Germany will increase financial aid to Ukraine to €11.5 billion, $13.41 billion, in the 2026 budget, up from €8.5 billion previously planned, according to budget documents seen by Reuters on Monday. Germany is Europe's largest contributor of military aid to Ukraine, having provided around €40 billion since Russia's 2022 invasion. Ukraine's special forces said they had hit a pumping station at a Russian oil depot in the occupied Crimean Peninsula overnight. The Hvardiivka oil depot is an important element of the fuel logistics system of the occupying authorities in Crimea, the special forces said on Telegram on Monday. It is important for supplying military facilities and transport of the enemy army. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian drone attack damaged civilian infrastructure in the Saratov region, the governor of the western Russian region said on Tuesday. All emergency services were deployed to the scene, Roman Basurgin said on Telegram. Belgium has enlisted the help of foreign armed forces to seize or track down drones that have made incursions around its airports, military bases, and a nuclear plant, with officials saying it all bears the hallmarks of Russian interference. "We're not saying it's Russia. We're saying it looks like Russia," said a Belgian official, speaking on condition of anonymity. "It's impossible to connect any incident with an actor. We have nothing." The official said Belgium was working with partners to try to get our hands on a drone or detect where it is launched from and where it's going. Russia has denied involvement with the drones. Lukoil declared force majeure at its Iraqi oil field, sources told Reuters on Monday, and Bulgaria was poised to seize its Burgas refinery as the Russian company's international operations buckled under the strain of U.S. sanctions. The force majeure at the West Kurna II field in Iraq marks the biggest fallout yet from the sanctions imposed on Russian oil majors Lukoil and Rosneft last month as part of U.S. President Donald Trump's push to end the war in Ukraine. Russia had planned to seize the Ukrainian town of Pokrovsk, a logistical hub in the Donetsk region, by November 2024. Its forces are a year behind schedule. Ukrainian defenders, although vastly outnumbered, have fought tenaciously to hold on to the Donbass defense line, killing over 20,000 Russian troops a month in the process. Now, Russia appears to be on the cusp of consolidating control over the ruins of the town as it pushes more and more troops into Pokrovsk's shattered buildings, and Russian drones cut off Ukrainian defenders from resupply. Pokrovsk is not an isolated battle. Russian forces are slowly turning Ukrainian positions to the north and south into pockets and are on the outskirts of Kostiantynivka. Just as concerning, Russian forces are using new long-range wire-guided drones and glide bombs to depopulate towns as they come into range, hunting civilians in Kramatorsk, just as they have depopulated the town of Kherson in southern Ukraine. Recent advances northward along the Dnipro River risk exposing the economic center of Zaporizhzhia to these terror tactics. If the Donbass falls, Russia's aggression will turn to Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv. The tragic irony about the last 9 months of war is that while international discussion has been dominated by the prospects for negotiations and ceasefires, Russia has ramped up the intensity of fighting. At the front, as well as in its long-range strikes on Ukraine's cities, the Kremlin aims to break the back of Ukrainian resistance. Ukraine has been open to negotiations, but the failure of its partners to apply pressure on Russia has instead allowed Russian President Vladimir Putin to stall for time to change the facts on the ground. As Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine approaches its 4th year, both sides show signs of fatigue, but neither is ready for peace. Despite months of diplomatic outreach from the United States, Putin has offered no concessions on his maximalist demands, according to which Russia would only pause the fighting at the expense of Ukraine's sovereignty. And since Ukraine is the defender, Russia's determination to continue attacking gives Kyiv no choice but to keep fighting. Russia has thwarted a Ukrainian-British plan to hijack a MiG-31 jet equipped with a hypersonic missile and to use it to carry out a false flag attack on a major NATO airbase, the country's state security service reported. The FSB, Russia's domestic intelligence agency, said in a statement carried by state media on Tuesday that the alleged operation was directed by the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense and its UK handlers. The plot sought to convince a Russian pilot to fly a MiG-31 armed with a Kinzhal air-launched ballistic missile, a key weapon in Moscow's arsenal, to the Romanian city of Constanta, where NATO is building its largest airbase in southeastern Europe. The plane would then be shot down by air defenses, providing a large-scale provocation. Russian state television showed pictures of messages and recordings of a man who they said was working for Ukrainian and British intelligence. The individual reportedly offered $3 million to the pilot to take part in the scheme, as well as citizenship of any European country of his choosing. An FSB official claimed that British-founded group Bellingcat, which is branded as undesirable by the Russian government, was involved in the operation or was used as a cover or intermediary, according to the state-run TASS news agency. The Russian security service criticized its Ukrainian and British counterparts for showing a lack of originality in plots, pointing to a similar allegation it made in 2022, months after the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. At the time, the FSB said the United Kingdom had participated in a Ukrainian operation to hijack an advanced Sukhoi Su-34 fighter by buying off the pilot and offering Western citizenship. Bellingcat has not immediately responded to the accusation of its involvement in the latest claim. The organization did reject the FSB's framing in the 2022 allegations. Russia, Ukraine, and its Western allies persist in fighting a vicious information war as the war on the ground shows little sign of easing. Russian ground forces have been pushing deeper into eastern Ukraine in an attempt to take control of more land and resources, but movement on the front line remains incremental. The two sides are also engaged in a war of attrition in the skies as they launch hundreds of aerial strikes against each other on a daily basis. Russian attacks, some of them using Kinzhal missiles, have heavily damaged Ukrainian energy infrastructure over the past week.